Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to be talking about Glutonny and specifically does he need a secondary. We did a video about this on Light and I really like the idea, so we're going to be doing it for Gluto. And I know Glutonny has already been experimenting with the Wolf and the Roy in bracket. We saw it against Sonics at LSI and a couple other tournaments from him. But I want to talk about some other characters that could be good, as well as if the Wolf and the Roy are the best choices. So without further ado, let's get right onto it. So the characters we're going to be talking about today for the bad matchups are Ryu, Ken, Olimar, Sonic, Kazuya, and Game & Watch, and the honorable mentions are Bayonetta, Pac-Man, and Ness. I feel like these are only honorable mentions because I think Bloom is just beating Glutonny with Bayonetta, and SDI is definitely a factor there, but that kind of sucks. We can't really fix him not being able to SDI, unfortunately, so that's going to apply to all characters, and I don't think a secondary would help with that. And then Pac-Man and Ness, even though he does lose to Gact and T, his record versus Modzai, the best Pac-Man in Europe, is like 11-1, and his record versus Pew, the best Ness in Europe, is like 28 or something in 1. So, like, I think he's fine in those matchups. I just think he loses versus those top players, but they are something that I should mention because, like, he does struggle with the character reps a little bit, but these are the main ones we're going to be focusing on, and they're going to be the factor of basically all the decisions we're making. So the 6 characters we're going to be talking about is going to be Min Min, Wolf, Pac-Man, Aegis, Roy, and Cloud. Big ups to Wolf and Roy already because he has been trialing with them. But we're going to be eliminating characters slowly throughout the video based off either if the matchup spread isn't quite good enough compared to the other characters, if the character's too hard for secondary, or if I don't think it fits the playstyle of Gluto well enough. And starting off, we're just going to eliminate Pac-Man right off the bat, because even though his matchup spread is very good for what Glutonny needs, that character is just extremely hard. Your bag of tricks needs to be very, very good, and for a secondary, that isn't really what you want. For a secondary, you want your raw skill of the game to be carried, rather than your character knowledge. So Pac-Man is going to be eliminated, but I thought he should at least be a mention. Starting off with the DeBuzz matchup chart, we have Olimar here, and he is getting bodied by Cloud. That is a -2 matchup, so that's points for Cloud. He's losing to Wolf, so that's good for Wolf, and he's slightly losing to both Aegis and Min Min. So that is very good for all of those characters, and the only character here that is at a slight disadvantage is going to be Roy. Compared to the other characters, they all win, where Roy actually goes even with the character, so that is something to consider. So everyone gets points here except Roy, but no one is going to be losing to Olimar, which is good for our consideration. Up next is the Kazuya matchup chart. This was made by Ferps. Again, his Twitter will be in the description down below, as everyone's will be in this video. And in the losing tier, we only have Min Min. Everyone else that we've mentioned today is in even or even winning for Kazuya, so that is a lot of points for Min Min considering everyone else kind of struggles. You have Roy and Cloud in even or winning, and then Roy just in straight up win. So that's pretty bad for Roy. And Cloud, we're going to count the worst of the worst, so we're going to assume that Cloud is now losing that, which is, again, not great for Cloud. And then you have Aegis and Wolf in the even tier, so it's not looking terrible for them, but Min Min's definitely going to be gaining a little bit ahead compared to the other characters on this one. For the Game & Watch matchup chart, this was made by Meister, by the way. This one's a little tricky because even though Glutonny beat Mia at the Scuffle Tour, I still think this is a rough matchup for Wario, but also the only characters that Meister has beating Game & Watch is Zero Suit, Ike, and Shulk, and I'm not going to tell Gluto to secondary any of them. I'm not going to tell anyone to secondary those characters because Zero Suit and Shulk are way too hard to secondary, and Ike is trash. So why would you ever secondary him? I take that back. It is good to secondary him if you only need one for Game & Watch, but Glutonny, we have a wide spread that we want to cover, and Ike does not cover nearly enough options, so I'm not going to tell him that. But it is something to consider that Wolf, Aegis, and Cloud all go even, which is better than losing, so minus points for Roy and Min Min, up points for the other 3. Looking good for, honestly, Cloud, Aegis, Wolf right now. They seem to be ahead of the pack. Up next is Ken and Ryu, and we're going to be using the matchup chart of Ryu made by Vendetta because I feel like Ken and Ryu are similar enough where the matchups won't change too much, at least the ones that we care about in this video. But if I'm wrong, of course, maybe Ken wins or loses a matchup compared to the ones that we're talking about super hard. Please let me know down below. But we have Wolf and Aegis in the winning tier. It does say question mark here for Aegis, but I looked up some Aegis matchup charts, and it seems like most people agree that Aegis does beat the Shotos, and everyone else is in even, which is really good, because if you were losing against Ken and Ryu, you probably just weren't going to be in contention, because Glutonny struggles a lot with these characters. Out of everyone on the list, they're probably the ones he struggles the most with, not only because Wario doesn't do great in the matchup, but also just because he can't really SDI, and you need to SDI versus the Shotos. That is a massive part of the game plan, so huge points to Wolf and Aegis, but no dock points from anyone else. Up next is the Sonic matchup chart. This was made by Sonics, and this one's also a little tough to gauge just because Sonic doesn't lose any matchups, and some people may disagree with this. I think Sonic doesn't lose any matchups. I think everything is at worst even, and it seems like Sonic does agree with me here. But we do have both Aegis and Roy in the even tier, so that is huge ups to those characters. That is definitely super, super important to consider, and everyone else is going to be in slight disadvantage. But we're not going to be docking away points for them being in slight disadvantage just because, like, I mean, the entire cast is, so that is really good for Aegis and Roy. So now that we've looked at all the matchups, we have Min Min, Wolf, Roy, Cloud, and Aegis remaining, and this is who they win against in the plus, and this is who they lose against. So this part of the video is just like really scuffed. I just have random characters like everywhere for some reason, but this is what it's actually supposed to look like, just so people don't get a little confused. We have Min Min, who is winning against Kazuya and Olimar and losing to Game & Watch. Wolf, who is winning against Ryu and Olimar and losing to no notable characters, because Sonic, again, we're not really counting him as a loss because basically everyone loses to Sonic. Roy, we're counting him as a win against Sonic because he goes even against the character, but he's losing against Kazuya and Game & Watch. Cloud, he is winning against Olimar, but slightly losing to Kazuya. Aegis, he is winning against Ryu, Olimar, Sonic, rather, and then loses no matchups, actually no matchups, because they are good against Sonic. So that's what it's actually supposed to look like. Sorry that's a little scuffed. Hope you all are enjoying. And the first one that we're going to be eliminating is Min Min, just because even though Min Min is a great secondary character, I don't feel like it's a Gluto character. One of the best things about Glutonny is his movement, and Min Min's movement is void. That character's movement is garbage. Her main thing is just kind of sitting on one part of the stage, controlling it with the big arms, and I don't think that would suit Glutonny super, super well, so we're going to be eliminating Min Min first. And the next character we're going to talk about is going to be Cloud. He is the next to go simply because his matchup spread isn't as good as Aegis and Wolf. And I value that Glutonny has, one, more time on Roy, and two, I think being better at the Sonic matchup is better than being better at the Olimar matchup. I think Glutonny struggles against Sonic more. Even though Roy has more losing matchups and the Kazuya matchup isn't as bad for Cloud, I just think Glutonny's experience on Roy helps him out a lot. And again, that Sonic matchup, having that experience is very valuable. So we are going to be eliminating Cloud, but I still think Cloud is a great secondary character. Like, I think these top four, Min Min is still fifth, but I think it's like Min Min, and then there's like a little gap between these four because these four characters are all just so good. Amazing secondary characters, and Cloud is still very good, but we are going to be eliminating him just because the Roy familiarity helps out a lot. And the next character that we're going to eliminate is going to be Roy because, again, Wolf and Aegis just have a way better matchup spread for the characters. Like, Wolf is winning against Ken and Ryu, so is Aegis. They're both winning against Olimar, and Aegis is winning against Sonic. Like, there is no real reason to pick Roy over Aegis in this situation, other than, of course, like, he likes Roy more, which, in actuality, he's more likely to pick Roy than Aegis, just because we have seen a pretty decent amount of Roy from him in tournaments. His Roy is still very good, and being good against Sonic does help out a lot, but for the sake of this video, if we're just trying to pick a character that is good against the most matchups, Roy doesn't do that. He only fits the one niche. Sorry for the ad, by the way, but he only fits that against Sonic, and that just isn't enough when you have Wolf covering more matchups, you have Aegis covering more matchups, you have Roy losing, so we're going to be eliminating Roy at third. It feels a little weird because, like, you know, he does have a lot of practice with this character, but still, he is out the door, and we're going to be picking the top two between Aegis and Wolf. And here we have it, Aegis versus Wolf, and on paper, the decision is Aegis, because Aegis just does better. She is the same versus Ryu and Ken. They both win that matchup. Olimar Wolf is a little bit better, but Aegis winning against Sonic is a huge boon. That is Glutonny's two worst matchups being covered, but I'm not going to pick Aegis. And hear me out, you might get mad, but also, here's the logic. Wolf is already a very good character for Glutonny. Glutonny's Wolf is incredible. We've seen it take games off Sonic's at LSI, and we've also seen it in other tournaments. It's already something he's put into practice, and when picking up a secondary, when you already have a lot of reps on the character, that is very important. Honestly, Glutonny's Wolf could be considered a secondary. If he were to have one, it would be his Wolf right now. I just want to see him put more time into it, and even though the Aegis covers more matchups, I also don't think Aegis is a great character for Glutonny, just because I don't feel like Pyra fits Gluto's playstyle well, and also Glutonny is a player that makes these incredible comebacks, and while Aegis can certainly do that, I do feel like Wolf is better for that. You have some back air stuff that is way easier to set up than down air, because you have like better confirms into it. You just kind of have to hit that slow down air with Pyra Mithra, whereas Wolf, you can like hit a crazy side B, or you can hit like a forward air into a back air. You have more clutch potential, and Glutonny is insane on that clutch potential. You may disagree with me on that factor, but I think it is undeniable that Glutonny's Wolf is already better than the Aegis, and the reps help him out a lot there. So even though it seems like a bit of a cop-out because like Wolf is kind of already a secondary, we are going to be choosing Wolf as Glutonny's secondary, though Aegis is a close contender, and it still isn't something that he should like completely disregard. I think the Aegis should still be considered, but we're going to be choosing Wolf. we've reached the grand conclusion. We have chosen Wolf, and it's a bit of a cop-out because, Glutonny kind of already chose Wolf himself, but, like, should he fully commit to secondary this character? Does he need to have the Wolf secondary at all times? And the answer is no. He's a top 10 player in the world without the Wolf secondary. He has won majors without Wolf. He doesn't need it. Would it help? Yes, and immensely. And I think especially in this case scenario, it helps a lot because he's showing so much promise with the Wolf. The Wolf, we already know it's very good. We already know it's in practice. If he just puts like more time in it, he commits more to the secondary, and we see it in more matchups than just like the bad Sonic one. I want to see the Wolf more. I want to see him try it more. I think it could really help, but then again, I am super pushing for secondaries like basically at all times. But I think Glutonny, he has a ton of potential with the Wolf. He doesn't need it, of course. The Wario is still absolutely incredible, but I think it could be really interesting and help him be a little more consistent in some of those matchups where he gets upset in. And I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If there's a character that you would have chosen, please let me know down below. If there's a character I messed out, please let me know down below. All that good stuff. Sport's been absolutely unreal lately. Next player, I really like this type of series, so the next player that you guys want to see, please leave a suggestion. I'll be sure to do them. Thank you for everything, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.